Welcome. So today I want to try and help answer the question, is the Action 5 Pro a good vlog camera? In order to do this, I will run a series of tests on my Sony ZV-E10 Mark II, my Action 5 Pro, and my iPhone 15 Pro. We'll run these scenarios in the studio, outside. We'll look at usability, the practicality of the cameras in those situations. We'll have a look at the video quality. We'll have a look at the stability in all of the environments. And also we'll do a quick audio test as well, just to show the audio capabilities of the cameras. By sharing this information with you and these scenarios, I hope this will help you make a decision if you're looking at the Action 5 Pro for using it as a vlog camera. For all of the cameras, while we're doing the scenarios, I will display the settings on the screen to allow you to evaluate the different settings I've used between the cameras and make a comparison. So let's start by looking at all of these cameras in a studio environment. We'll start with the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. Now this camera has an interchangeable lens. I have the 16 to 35mm kit lens currently on the camera, and it has a f3.5 aperture setting for its lowest value, which will give me some degree of background blur and separation from the background. If we now move to the Action 5 Pro, now this camera doesn't have any depth of field control, and it also has a bigger field of view, which means we're going to bring in a lot more of the studio environment into the frame. The iPhone 15 Pro is going to give us a good quality picture, doesn't have any real depth of field control, but does have the ability to switch between the different lenses in the camera. So let's now have a look at the footage for these cameras side by side and do some comparison and analyze which camera is more usable and more practical in a studio situation. And then we'll move to looking at other scenarios in an outside environment doing a vlog. So let's now have a look at the three videos side by side, starting with the iPhone video in the top left. You can see from this video it's produced a clear image, but the colour is slightly off and will need adjusting in post. It's got a slightly yellow tinge to it, so we'll need some adjustment. But the overall image quality is good. Moving to the top right, as expected, the Sony has produced a good clear image with a good amount of blur to the background and separation. If you move now to the bottom with the Action 5 Pro, you'll notice that this again has produced a good image, but because of the field of view, you now have a lot more of the studio environment in view, and you don't have the separation with the background. So there are a few things we could do here. We could do this and crop into the image. Now, this is going to expose some of the noise in the video, but this may be acceptable, but may give it a less natural look. Or we could move the camera closer to us in a studio environment, but this is going to produce an issue where it's going to make my facial features look a lot slimmer than what they are. So it really now depends on what your requirements are for your output from the studio. My view on this, the Sony is definitely the better camera for the studio environment, but the iPhone is an acceptable one as well. And the Action 5 Pro, depending on positioning and maybe a bit of editing, would also work well as a studio camera. But like I say, out of all of the cameras tested in the studio element, the Sony definitely comes out a lot better, as I would expect. So let's move on now.
Okay, so the weather in the UK at the moment is not good, so I'm having to record this from the exotic location of my back garden rather than taking you out somewhere else. It's very overcast, drizzly and windy, as you can possibly tell. So this is not the ideal situation for the Sony. And the Sony, for one, does not have any sort of weather protection with the ZV E10 Mark II. So I probably wouldn't want it out in this condition for long. Also, with the Sony, the kit lens is a 16 to 35, and at 16mm, I still have to put this camera quite far out from me in order to record, and that is making my arm ache because it is not exactly the lightest of cameras to be using. And at the moment also I've got this in the standard stabilization mode. So what I will do in a minute is I'll switch this to the active stabilization and we'll see if that makes a difference. Okay, so this is the Sony now with the active stabilization on. Now, one issue with using the active stabilization is it does crop the image in a little bit while in use. Now, this does mean that I have to hold the camera slightly further away to keep myself in the frame. So with the weight of the camera, I wouldn't want to try doing this for too long because it is going to cause my arm to ache. Okay, so I think that's good enough for a test with the Sony. Let's move on and look at the other cameras. Okay, so this is now with the Action 5 Pro. First thing I notice is that it's a lot lighter now on my arms. I can actually walk and talk for quite a while now without any issue holding up the camera. I can have my arms in a more natural position, so that's a good thing. Also with the Action 5 Pro, the camera itself is fully weatherproof, so I don't have to worry about that at all with the Action 5 Pro. And the field of view is good on the Action 5 Pro, so I'm going to get a good background in the image as well. So overall, this is looking like a good camera when I'm out and about walking and talking. Do have it set to rock steady at the moment. We will switch over to rock steady plus and see what difference that makes to the stabilization. So let me do that now. Okay, so we've now switched over to the rock steady plus for the stabilization, see whether that makes any difference for the stability of the video. I am just doing a normal walking pace, the same as what I was doing with the Sony. So hopefully this video should come out more stable and give a good experience walking around doing a walking headshot. Okay, so we're now recording on the iPhone 15 Pro. Now, the thing with the iPhone 15 Pro is when I want to record using the high quality cameras, I have to have the screen of the camera turned away from me. So at the moment, I can't tell what it is I'm actually recording or what I've got in the frame of view. The other problem will be that there is no active stabilization as such for the iPhone 15 Pro. So you're going to probably have to use something like a gimbal. And like I say, for a solo creator, the most frustrating part is that you can't actually see what you've got in your frame of view. So this does make it difficult when you're out and about and you want to do a talking headshot like this while walking around and trying to get scenery and things in at the same time, because you have no clue what you're actually recording. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at all the footage that we've taken outside and do some comparison.
Okay, so let's have a look at the 3 videos that we recorded outside. Starting first with the Sony in the top left. Now, I do have a confession to make on this video. I left the picture profile in S-Cinetone, and this does cause an issue where the ISO can't go below 125, which means I may have slightly overexposed the image in the video. But let's continue. With the Sony, I find that the camera is a little heavy for doing talking headshots where you're walking around and holding the camera out in front of you. Now, this is made worse if using the kit lens, because obviously I have to hold it slightly further away. And then when I switch on the active stability, this makes it even worse again because it crops in the image. So from my point of view, using the Sony in a talking headshot video while you're walking around is not the best solution and probably wouldn't be my preferred solution. So let's move now to the iPhone in the top right corner. Now, the iPhone I get frustrated with anyway because I can't see what is in the field of view and what I'm recording while I'm walking, talking with the iPhone because the screen is away from me. I could put a little selfie mirror on the back of the camera, but to be honest, that's not going to help. So the iPhone as well doesn't have any stabilization. So the image isn't stable at all. So again, the iPhone is not ideal for what I would want to use. So let's look at the Action 5 Pro. Now the Action 5 Pro produced a very good image and the stabilization was good. I think the Action 5 Pro is probably the best vlog camera when walking and talking at the same time out of the three that I have tested. Let's now just have a quick look at the audio directly out of these cameras. I'm not going to give this much weight. I won't bother scoring these on their audio capabilities out of the cameras directly. This really is just to show you the type of audio that you get without using external microphones on these cameras. This is an audio test with the iPhone 15 Pro directly out of the camera. This is an audio test with the Action 5 Pro directly out of the camera. Okay, so this is an audio test directly out of the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. So let's have a recap now of the tests we've done so far. Let's start with looking at the studio tests. So the Sony there had a good ease of use. It was practical in the studio, so it came out on top. The Action 5 Pro is easy to use, but may not be quite so practical in the studio due to its field of view. The iPhone, even though it can produce a good quality image in a studio environment, it isn't as easy to set up. You can't always see what you're filming unless you hook it up to an external monitor or mirror it to another device. And it can be a little fiddly when setting it up on a tripod because you end up pushing buttons, turning it off, and all sorts of things like that. So in a studio, the iPhone comes in last. Okay, so let's now have a look at the outside tests. The Sony is a little heavy for walking around with, and also the stability isn't perfect on the Sony compared to the Action 5 Pro. So the Sony didn't score as high in that test on the outside. The Action 5 Pro, easy to use, very practical for walking, talking videos outside, no problems at all. The iPhone again is let down by the fact that you can't see what you're recording, and it doesn't really have any degree of stability in those situations. So the final score shows that the Action 5 Pro is the best vlogging camera out of the three that I have tested today. Hopefully you found this video useful. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon in another video.